When it comes to Souls-likes, there are two very distinct types of players. There are those who can simply pick up the controller, rush headfirst into battle, and come out the other side relatively unscathed. Then there are those who struggle to beat the tutorial without breaking into a mad sweat, and a session without a rage quit is considered a good day. I'm definitely one of the latter. That said, Steelrising is, without a doubt, a Souls-like game. In fact, it would be hard to review Steelrising without making the comparisons to Souls games, as so many of its gameplay mechanics are drawn directly from the genre. Hard-earned leveling up system? Check. Intricate level design? Check. Unforgiving combat that relies on timing and skill? Check and check. You play as Aegis, an automaton, that's a robot to you and me, hanging around Paris during the French Revolution. It's your job to find out why the streets are full of hulking machines and an absurd amount of dead bodies, which serves as the premise for the plot. As Steelrising is set during the French Revolution, there are of course a few famous faces that you bump into along the way, but don't expect much historical accuracy, obviously. In fact, the story itself doesn't really do enough for me, and I wasn't that far into my playthrough before I realised that I didn't really care what was going on. Narratively, Steelrising can be boiled down to a series of fetch quests, because most of what's going on is all drip-fed to you via cutscenes and gameplay bits that hold it all together. Having set off to find one NPC, you're quickly tasked with finding another, and this gameplay loop is pretty much how the rest of the game plays out. Things take so long to get going that by the time they do, I pretty much lost interest in the overall plot. On top of this, Aegis does feel a little, well, robot-like. As a character, she feels a little lifeless and stunted. I did enjoy the time I spent with Steelrising, but the story and the characters were not the highlight. Thankfully, what Steelrising lacks in narrative, it makes up for in gameplay. Exploration is fun, with the large sections of Paris to explore and discover. This is definitely one of Steelrising's strengths, as its level design is solid. From the streets and the alleyways, or up into the buildings, each area felt surprisingly intricate and interwoven. Gates can be unlocked to open up shortcuts for quicker exploration, as is a standard for the genre, and you can unlock skills by defeating bosses later on in the game. Many of the main boss battles follow a fairly repetitive structure. Having worked your way through each area, you soon encounter a hulking machine, or a titan as they're called. That being said, I felt like I was able to best each one by using a very similar tactic each time. Learning the attacks and the animations is a given for any game in the genre, but once you have them down, taking out each boss becomes a bit of a breeze. Although the bosses are repetitive and forgettable, the abilities gained by defeating them make all the difference when revisiting an area, because open gates will only take you so far. Kicking through a wall with the ram ability or grappling to a balcony that was earlier out of reach makes exploring familiar areas well worth your time. Regardless of how fun exploration is, it's the combat that is Steelrising's bread and butter. Aegis is more than handy in a fight and can be customised in the usual ways to fit a variety of playstyles. Steelrising gives you a choice of 4 starting classes, but you can tinker with these as you wish, providing you have enough anima essence stocked up. There are the standard variety of light and heavy attacks, and a whole range of weapons to choose from. Weapon choice is more than just picking what feels good to hit stuff with, as each weapon has a special move that can make a difference to how you play. Having settled on my weapons of choice, I was surprised at how quickly I took to the combat in Steelrising. With a few well-placed upgrades, and a little bit of trial, error and luck, I quickly felt like I was getting to grips with the combat in a way that I haven't felt before in other games within the genre. That's not to say that the combat is perfect, it's not. As with the vast majority of Soul-likes, combat is always a trade-off, more of a carefully plotted dance as opposed to a hack slash and hope for the best. No matter how much I practiced or varied my strategy, it still felt like something was off. I felt like I was getting hit when I shouldn't, or enemies were able to withstand a well-placed attack that should have taken them out. Now, I know these are the standard complaints when it comes to this kind of game, and smarter players than I will talk about hitboxes and iframes and all that other mumbo-jumbo, but I'm definitely not that guy. Regardless, something didn't feel as tight as it should have done during combat, and this is something that bled into other areas of the game too. Whether that be the odd platforming section that feels a little bit stiff, or a few cutscenes with poorly lip-synced animations, there's a few lingering bits here and there that ensure Steelrising is firmly a good game and not a great one. Alongside this, my time with Steelrising was not entirely bug-free. I had the odd clipping issue, and a cutscene where Aegis appeared to float, and a few clunky animations along the way. A couple of times throughout my playthrough, the game also crashed and kicked me back to the home screen. Luckily, the checkpoints in the game are relatively forgiving and I didn't lose too much progress, but it's noteworthy enough to report here. Although a tough game by design, Steelrising does offer up an assist mode that can be customised to your liking should you wish to tweak how difficult it plays. Whether you want to minimise the amount of damage you receive to the point of becoming invincible, or ensure that you retain all of your hard-earned anima essence when you die, the option is there if you want to take it. In terms of accessibility, this is a massive step in the right direction, but be warned, turning this on for even a minute disables the vast majority of trophies, if not all of them, until you start another game at standard difficulty level. One step forward, one step back, I suppose. Steelrising is a good, if challenging, time. If you're thirsting for your next Souls-like after milking Elden Ring dry, then the combat here will feel oddly familiar, and you're sure to find something to enjoy, but it's not without fault. Overall, Steelrising hits way more than it misses, but a forgettable story and a few repetitive boss battles hold it back from being a truly great game. And that is the end of this review. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you found this review to be useful and informative. If you did, do us a solid and hit the like and subscribe buttons below, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss any future videos. I've been Chris, you've been gorgeous, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, cheers my dears.